Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, and welcome, friends, to this special session of Gender Equality Talks Live on the theme of, Feminist World-Building, Creative Energies, Collective Journeys. This session is being organized with support from Asia Pacific Forum on Women, Law and Development, or APWLD, as we call it. In the lead up to the 4th Asia Pacific Feminist Forum, or APFF4, that will be held in Chiang Mai, Thailand during 12 to 14 September. This session is being live streamed on CNS YouTube channel and also on DRT SPR channel, thanks to Dr. Reddy. We are indeed honored to have with us 3 firebrand feminist leaders as panelists for this online conversation today. And they are none other than ABIA AKRAM from Pakistan, ENI LESTARI from Indonesia, and Josiah from Malaysia. ABIA is a disability rights activist and a leading figure within the disability rights movement in the Asia and Pacific. She is the founder and CEO of National Forum of Women with Disabilities in Pakistan. A former migrant domestic worker, ENI is a migrant rights activist and the chairperson of International Migrants Alliance, the first ever global alliance of grassroots migrants, immigrants, refugees, and other displaced people. Ivy is a women's rights activist and has played a pioneer role in setting up Malaysia's first shelter for survivors of domestic violence back in 1982. She led Malaysia's Women's Aid Organization for 20 years as its past president and executive director. Through her contributions, Ivy has helped put domestic violence on the national agenda. Welcome, ABIA, ENI, and Ivy. We are indeed very, very proud and honored to have you with us today. Now, my first question to the panelists is, what does a feminist world mean to you? ABIA, can you begin, please?
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you so much and inviting me for this very important discussion today. I'm really honored to be part of this panel because we have experts with us and talking about the inclusion and especially from the development justice perspective. In my opinion and from my experience of last 2 decades in the feminist world, I felt like advances in the human rights is the core of engaging all the diversified groups in the feminist movement and creating that enabling environment to work. Because we believe that laws, policies, legislation, it's really important to implement. But at the same time, if you have the transformative laws, legal practices, and the systems that need to be shaped according to the needs of all diversities, or specifically from the feminist perspective, that will create a huge change in the world, where women from the human rights perspective can feel their strength, can be engaged, and create that grassroots level movement, or those kind of systematic changes where we can see the engagement of the feminist approach and the perspective on their advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you, ABIA. Thank you for talking about the importance of enabling environment. That is important, and that is going to help in the implementation of the laws. Laws are important, but laws just on paper are not going to help. ENI, we come to ENI with the same question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Shobha, for the question. I've been involved with migration, women and feminist movement in the past 20 years. And honestly, learning about feminism, it gave me language to what I experience. I'm a former migrant. I'm continue to be activist for migrants' rights everywhere globally. And this is when I realized that migration is not merely an economic question. It's not a merely we are poor and it is our birthright to be poor. I learned a lot about how the structural exploitation and the neocolonialization has been intensified since 1970s with neoliberal globalization. And then I also learned how the crisis actually brought new type of poverty, displacement, and unemployment, and new type of crisis as what we experience today. So as a migrant myself, moving out from my country because of Asian financial crisis in 98, it really gave me a lesson that every time there is crisis, new people will be displaced from different part of the world. And as for today, migration has been part of the economic development project for many capitalist countries. And today, the number of migrants has reached to the point of almost nearly 300 million population. I just imagine this is as big as Indonesian population itself. And I feel very sad because I thought being migrant will be, I mean, as a migrant myself and all my colleagues always tell to ourselves, we will be the last to this journey. But in the end of the day, in the past 20 years more, we witness more people being displaced and being forced, So I just imagine what feminists would look like. I really wish, that someday there will be economy, a political environment where everyone in that territory or country will be fed enough, will be treated in equality, and we don't really have to, migrate or being homeless or being displaced just because we have to survive. So I think this kind of work, I believe feminist women will really be the pioneer of upholding this kind of dream. Why? Because woman is really the natural caretaker of the society. We take care of our family, our society. We don't only think about ourselves, we also think about our population, the next generation. And I think feminist world means this is when the time women will really lead, facilitate, and ensure that everyone in the society will be treated with, justice and equality.
Great.
Thank you. Yes, Ivy, please. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Oh, okay, my turn now. Hi, Shobha. Hi, hello, everybody. So your question is like, what do we mean when we want a feminist world? For me, a
Yes.
feminist world will be joyous. It will be a world where no one will be left behind. It won't just be a tagline when we keep saying no one will be left behind, or a tagline like no one has become poor by sharing. I think as feminists, because we are women ourselves, and of course men too can be feminists, but because if women led the world, if feminists led the world and we adopt feminist policy, I truly believe it'll be a peaceful world. See, war is a choice, so is peace. So if feminists led the world, we would be thinking about everybody. I remember many years ago when we were talking to government authorities and to say, you must plan, your development plans must include women. And they will say, oh, no, Ivy, we plan for people, not for women. But of course, now we know that we just can't plan for people. We have to plan for the people who are marginalized, and women are marginalized. Migrant workers are marginalized. Refugees are marginalized. Poor people are marginalized. Rural people are marginalized. So for me, a feminist world would be a world where no one will be left behind. It won't just be a tagline. We would actually make sure that our policies, our action plans, would include everybody. There will be a conversation, there will be consent from people. If we're going and building a bridge or building a factory or building whatever you're doing, you will make sure there is a conversation with the community. There will be consent. We'll be inclusive. And I think women, we know as feminists, we know because we have been discriminated ourselves. So we know what it is like to be left behind. So because of that personal experience, and the personal is political, right? We will also bring, if we are in charge of the world, when we run the world, I don't say if, when we run the world, I know that it will be a more joyous, inclusive world.
And I hope that comes true soon enough, Ivy. And
It's already
also,
happening.
yes, yes. And you were right in saying that a feminist world is about sharing and caring for others.
Yes.
That is, and which is very much that is the opposite of a patriarchal society where it is snatching away power and showing your upmanship on others. So that is the great difference. And unless you learn about sharing and caring, and as Ivy said, about having inclusive policies and leave no one behind in the actual sense of the word, reach the most unreached people. And I'm reminded of Mahatma Gandhi's talisman there, Ivy, because he said that whatever you do, you should keep in mind how it is going to benefit the person who's standing last in the line. And it should not be detrimental to the happiness, joys, and health of that person.
Oh, definitely. And it cannot just, I mean, it's also, a feminist world will be anti-capitalism, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
it will not, benefit the few rich people. It should
Yes.
benefit. And it's important to know that nobody becomes poor because we shared. The sharing is important. We're not going to be greedy. As the feminist world order will not be greedy. All the riches will not be in the hands of a few. It'll be shared.
Yes. And as we say, the saying goes that your joys multiply when you share, and your sorrows, they divide, they become less when you share. So I think that is important. So sharing will actually increase your happiness and joys.
Because we've seen so much of
yes,
exploitation, Shobha. I mean, what we feminists are really upset about is that if we look at neoliberal policies, there's so much of exploitation of people, especially, as ENI was saying, she comes from a migrant workers background. She herself was a migrant worker herself. The sheer shameless exploitation of people has to be stopped. Robbing people of their lands, of their resources. So all of this corruption, all of this will be different if feminists run the world.
Right, very right. ABIA, how is the current economic and geopolitical global order different from a feminist order? Ivy has, yes. Ivy has touched a little about it, but I want you to elaborate. Yes.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I think it's really important because we are seeing from the development justice perspective as well. When we are talking about the movements, when we're talking about sharing the space, creating that enabling environment where everyone have the equal rights and the opportunities, but at the same time, we are seeing that huge gap because of the current political situation, because of the climate change. All those differences are coming up, and that's why persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, and the feminist movement is more facing challenges in that context, and that's why they are not having the equal voices. I'm also referring to the shrinking space of the civil society organizations, and mostly they just talk about the implementation of the sustainable development goals, but not seeing on the diversities, the requirements of the feminist engagement, what kind of resources they need. The budgetary allocations are not justifiable. They are not including the gender perspective in a way that women and girls with disabilities, transgender, LGBTIQ, young people, all are getting equal resources and equal voice to contribute. And that's the reason, like we are saying, still we are not able to get that reach on the point of the development justice, because the political and the economical justice is not in the place. And more displacement of the people, as Annie have already mentioned. Like, it's really complicated when we see the diversity and the background of the intersectionalities and different groups, how we create that equal opportunities for them. And that's only possible when we have the seat on the table and you're talking on a high level forums, like we're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals implementation, the future for the summit. All those places need the real and the meaningful engagements from the feminist movements.
Thank you, ABIA. Annie, what are your insights on how is the current economic and geopolitical global order different from, or how is it different from development justice model, and how a feminist order can help there?
Yeah, I think all of us, the majority poor, are really the testament how the world is proven not in our favor. So I can say the world doesn't belong to us, the majority. And that's why we are the way we are now, right? So since the capitalism was born in 1800 up to now is more than 200, let's say more than 250 years ago, they promise a lot to the humanity, you know, to the majority of the population. They promise us development, they promise us a welfare, they promise us progress, they promise us equality, they promise us everything. And we see that kind of promises now in all aspects of our life, in the education system, in the United Nations, where they keep talking about development goals, and everywhere the language of development become very, very commonly used. And in fact, it is being justified in every national government project and report. But in the end of the day, now, for example, we witness the, you know, the catastrophe, the poverty, you know, the climate crisis, displacement, and all human rights violation against people and the humanity. And that's actually really when all this beautiful language become meaningless. And in the end of the day, we actually question, you know, the whole theoretical approach into this development direction. Are we really developing for the population or the majority of the, you know, people, or this is really, in the end of the day, will again benefit few over the majority? And that's when I conclude that the development that they are promoting today, it is not really for us. In the end of the day, this is only for few, for the global elite, and you know, and for the whatever project they are actually introducing to us, promoting to us, even selling around the world. In the end of the day, it's not really for the people. And I think we are all the testament how the so-called development actually bring us to the regression of the humanity itself. And I think this is one of the reasons why we come together and become very critical. We unify ourselves, we organize, and we also become very proactive in the questioning all of this paradigm. So I can say that despite all this language of development, me and at least the, you know, within IMA, we don't believe in the development promise anymore, because what they say is development, it means actually they make us poor and poorer every day, and they make us more dependent to investment, to foreign investment, to the loan, you know, and then suddenly we are trapped into WTO, IMF, World Bank, and all this type of agreement, which is actually not good for the for us. And the increased number of the migrant and refugee around the world, the ongoing war, actually also in the testament that it is not what the people want. It is not what we want. Now we are actually in the era where we have to do a face-to-face with this global elite who, despite all this climate crisis, health crisis, economic political crisis, they continue to justify their so-called project on top of the crisis that we already experienced. And I think it is really timely. We are living in the evolving era that we cannot close our eyes anymore and pretend the world is okay. No, we are not okay. Just be honest that we are not okay. So I think that's the reason why, you know, the APFF forum become very important for us, because it is where we are actually analyzing where we are now, and actually, and why we come to this situation and where we are going. I think it is a time that we cannot individualize our movement. We have to really come together, regardless of our countries, even our gender or our sector doesn't really matter. Now, it is time for us to really prove that a collective effort will really bring us to the better world, the feminist world that we want. And I think the development justice principle, the 5 pillars of development justice, give us the framework. That's why I love so much development justice, because it gives us the language that we can not even explain, what do we want? When we have to face the world leader, the United Nations, they always ask, what do you want? And now we have the language justice to tell them this is what we want. And I think it's just a matter of doing more work in terms of promoting development justice and unity among ourselves.
Thank you. Yes, please.
But I was going to say that
Yes.
one aspect of development justice is also climate justice, right? We're talking about the economy, we're talking about work and labor, but there might not be a planet for us to live in, because we see floods, we see islands drowning, especially in the Pacific. And I think feminists are in the forefront of looking at climate justice, right? And also that we need to save the planet. So we are so busy trying to make money, and we keep developing and developing, but is there going to be a planet for us to even live in? So feminists, when we see development justice, we must also include climate justice and have a better understanding, because people just dismiss us, it's all fine, it's just a bad weather. But people are still not accepting. The majority of people out there think that it's just a bad thunderstorm, it's just a couple of floods here. But when there is a flood in Pakistan, when there is a flood in any area, in any part of the world, the women, the marginalized, are the most affected, right? We know that. So I think when we talk about development justice, we cannot leave out climate justice too.
Yes, that's true. That's the climate justice is an important part of development justice, rightly so. Ivy, can you just help us understand more about this, the 4th Asia Pacific Feminist Forum, the upcoming one, and how can forums like this contribute to moving towards a feminist world order?
Okay, right. So the APFF, that is the Feminist, so I'm going blank, Asia Pacific Feminist Forum.
Yes,
This is the 4th one, a 4th gathering. And this time, when we gather in September, there's going to be about 500 feminists from all over Asia and the Pacific. Now, I've always felt very strongly, when women gather, we can move mountains. This is not just a gathering of women, it's part of our movement building. We all know if we have independent feminist movements can we hold any government accountable, right? So the gathering of 500 feminists in September, APFF4, will be an opportunity to not only, it's not about lamenting or describing, not lamenting is the wrong word, describing the problems. Of course, we're going to talk about the challenges and the continuous challenges and even new problems, because there's a backlash on women's human rights. There's a whole backlash at what the word human rights is not seen as being very popular these days. That we need to take a backseat when it comes to human rights. We now talk about, people's rights, not human rights. We mustn't talk about women's rights, but everybody's rights. So it's not going to be, the APFF is not only going to be describing what the problems are, but also the celebration. We need to get together, and we must get together to celebrate our achievements. The fact that we can bring 500 women together physically to a space, raise enough money to bring all these 500 women and put them in a space where we can celebrate, where we can plan, where we can plot, where we can discuss and come up with new strategies. So basically over the 3 days, first we're going to talk about where we are, what's the situation right now. And like I said, it's not just talking about the problems and challenges, but also recognizing the strengths of women's movements. And then the second day is, where do we want to go? This is the aspirational. This is the world that we want, the feminist world that we want to build. Where do we want to be, and how do we get there? And this is my own personal opinion, but I'm sure even ENI and ABIA and all of us will share. Movement building is going to be a very important component of how we get there, because we need to show the world that the women's movement is very strong. If you leave us behind, there's going to be impact. You know, of course, as the women's movements keep growing and growing, I look forward to a day where if women were to just call for a strike, were to call for a protest, to call for, women will just go out on the streets and they will protest. So building up the women's movement is really very important for me. And the APFF4 will be an opportunity not just to come up with new strategies and talk about what are the challenges, but it's also about strengthening the movements, is to making the connections. Of course, for many, many years, because of COVID, we couldn't get together physically. But even with through social media and through the internet, we were still very much together. In fact, the solidarity was quite strong even during those years when we couldn't meet with each other. But when we meet, I think there's going to be a whole renewed energy. So APFF4 is APFF4 in September is about building women's movements and strengthening and seeking solidarity with each other. It's going to be a place where there's going to be art. There's going to be a lot of art and dance and music. Okay, that's one of the what we're trying to make sure this year is, we've always had music and dance, but we wanted to make sure that this APFF4 is going to be very artistic and very creative. So we're encouraging everyone to come with come with clothes where you're going to get paint splattered on it. You're going to have lots of dance. We're going to have a lot of creativity. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of joy.
Yes, thank you. And it is about joy and happiness and addressing what actually affects and makes life difficult for women and the marginalized communities, as has been said earlier. Yes, yes.
And we're going to have very many practical workshops. We're going to have workshops on how to build your skills. We're going to have donor circles, right? There's going to be skills workshops. There's going to be strategy sharing workshops. It's not just going to be, we come together and we say, we are in trouble. It's going to be seeking solutions. So many of the workshops, we have emphasized that workshops will be solution-driven. It won't be just describing a problem. It'll be solution-driven.
Yes. So those who cannot come there, will they be able to take part in it online? That is because very few people may be able to come.
Absolutely. So part of the plan is, and please do go to our website and keep looking at our website. Part of the plan is that if you can't be there physically, we are hoping that some of the workshops, some of the discussions will be online. So no matter where you are in Asia and the Pacific, we are hoping that all will go well. The internet doesn't fail us, that people can participate wherever you're sitting down. Whether you're sitting in your bedroom or in your office or in a coffee shop somewhere, we are hoping that people will be able to tune in, to link in rather, and see what is happening. So we are making an effort to make it a hybrid thing. You're there physically, but you can also be there with us online. So like I said, the main aim is to really build the movement. And when I say movement, it has to be numbers. We need to have thousands and thousands of women plugged in. And we want to connect with these thousands and thousands of women from Asia and the Pacific. And in fact, we are getting quite a number of, for this APFF4, we are getting over quite a number of, usually it'd be kind of sad that people from the Pacific will only have about 5 or 10 people from the Pacific because it's so costly. But this time around, we made an effort to go down to the Pacific. The organizers went down to the Pacific to pass the word around and to encourage, not just Fiji, but but with the other islands, to make sure that the Solomon Islands and all the other islands, that they send participants. So we're getting quite a number of participants, almost 40, 50 participants from the Pacific. That's going to be a big change. For a change, that we're going to have Pacific people, Pacific women, Pacific feminists also a part of the movement and be present at APFF4.
Yeah, that's a very welcome change, a very welcome new addition, that involving the Pacific to that extent, because sometimes it so happens, for whatever reasons, as you said rightly, they are a little bit left out from, so far away. Yes.
Every time we come for a meeting, it says, where are the people from the Pacific? You know, and we really we are thankful that we were able to raise enough money to bring people from the Pacific to be part of it, so they can be, you know, they can participate fully.
Yes, thank you. One last question from our panelists. What does the APFF4 theme mean to you? The theme of APFF4 is Feminist World-Building, Creative Energies, Collective Journeys. ABIA, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is when we talk about feminist world building, creative energies and collective journeys itself, this theme reflects so much in it, because that gives the journeys which we have been witnessing. We were thinking in our first APFF or the second APFF that we are working in isolation, the small movements. We struggled to reach on the point where we have the collective voice to contribute. And APFF have given us that solidarity among the movements, and given that vision that we are not only like movement who are struggling. We have all those sisters who are collectively talking about their struggles, talking about their challenges and the success as well. And this year, when we talk about the creative energies, I think this is the most important one, where we are seeing the best practices of the regional level, like what we have achieved so far, how we are moving towards a new journey, or where we have all that collective efforts. Because we were just talking about the inclusion of women with disability, just a simple example, creating a ramp, making that inclusive panels, providing sign language interpretations, all these things we were not understanding how we are going to move with that. But now, after all those together or joint initiatives, we realize how important it is to give the space to all the diversified groups and giving that understanding as well. And also we thought like it's kind of a building a roadmap for us, like we are moving towards the 2030 agenda implementation, we are moving towards the Beijing 30 plus review, all those legal implementation plans. So where we are standing and how we are contributing, not only talking on the UN and just the policy implementation, but practically from the grassroots level, what movement buildings we have, what are the experiences, and we are living from there to move to the collective voices and the joint action plan. So that I think the feminist world having a new journey of hope. And I'm really excited about the fourth APFF because it's giving more opportunities. As we have mentioned, from the Pacific region, we are engaging more, we are getting more diversity in the groups and the engagement. So this will give a real place for the advocacy and the movement building, and the women's like feminist agenda, a great push to work together. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. ENI, what is your take on it? What does it mean to you? Yes.
Well, it really means a lot. It took us a long time to even come to this language, you know. We try to give justice and a theme that really reflect the current condition, and also what is our aspiration. I think the language of feminist world building is, we have been saying that in the past IPFF, and I think a lot of movement around the world within Asia Pacific are really still believing into that. And I think the world is giving us a right time to even justify that the solution to the current crisis is really building the world where, the woman will be treated equally and inclusive, and all the that development should not only benefit a few. I think this is what feminist world building in our perspective, and also creative energy. You know, as a migrant activist myself, we always live in crisis. The fact that we become migrants because we are victim of crisis, you know, and every time we move to another countries, we still suffer crisis. But what I really experienced and witness in that kind of desperation, difficulties, our creative energy suddenly, you know, like pop up shrine. We find a way how to express our, you know, our needs. We find a way how to voice out our difficulties, and we find a way how to collectivize our effort. In time of pandemic, for example, we witness how the community, the migrant community, women, and different part of grassroots communities are really finding their way to help each other, to you know, to feed each other when in time of isolation, when in time when the government do not even want to take care of you, the time when the government, the corporate just run away with their profit and neglect us on the street, right? So that creative energy really become during the pandemic especially really become our aspiration, that women are really creative creature. You know, we do not give up easily. We always find a way how to solve our problem. We are problem solver, and we find a way how to take care of our well-being, but also our community well-being. And I think this is where the creative energy that we want to bring in moving forward, because the world coming to us is more challenging than ever. We cannot expect that, you know, we will go back to the old days. We will never go back to the old life. We have to be ready in whatever situation, crisis, political conflict, war, climate crisis, you know, and name it. We have to be ready. And I think our creative energy is where we rely on our power. We have the power within our creative energy. And the collective journeys for me is really showing that, hey, we are not alone. We
Yeah.
are together, you know. This journey, this fight is not individual fight, it is our collective fight. And I think we in APWLD recognize that whatever the victories we achieve, it is our collective effort, it is within our collective journey. So I think we want to also try to, you know, like remove all this belief that one person can become a hero within this kind of movement. No, we have to recognize our strength is really within our collective journey itself. I think
That's
that's
right.
what it means to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ivy?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm picking up from what Annie was saying, and
Yes,
Abia was saying.
yes.
I think sometimes we as women forget the strength and the power that we have,
Yes.
right? You know, there's a phrase, I think it's an APWLD tagline where we say, if women stop, the world stops, right?
Yes, yes.
So
yes,
I think our theme, feminist world building, is not just aspirational. It's about doing the work. It's about organizing. Because we have learned to organize ourselves. If we let's look at all our achievements, I mean, for heaven's sakes, I mean, I have been doing this work for, you know, for about almost 30, 40 years. I mean, there was a time when people didn't want to even recognize domestic violence. But today, if anybody were to say, oh, domestic violence is a figment of your imagination, people will all stand up and say it's a reality. So women's movements and women's organizations and feminists have proven that they know how to organize themselves, they know how to advocate, they know how to lobby, and that is what I hope, that feminist world building, the theme is about coming together to build this world, to have very practical ideas of how we can organize ourselves to find strength in numbers and strength in solidarity. So I'm very excited about this theme because it is no longer aspirational. We are building, even as we speak right now, we are building this new world order. And it is a feminist world order that we are talking about. And we must remember, we make up half the world. We are big in numbers. We make up half the world. So we need to be in charge.
Yes, right. Rightly so. Very right. Okay, so now we open for comments and questions from our August audience. And we have Dr. Pam Rajput, from noted feminist leader from India. Pam, would you like to say something? If she was there online a little while ago.
So we
would
can't
like to-
see these people, right? We can't see the
No,
participants.
no. We can't see, but we know the names. Yes, but if she would like to comment or speak. We have, okay, meanwhile, as we wait for her, we have a comment from Renu Mishra, who heads Association for Advocacy and Legal Initiatives called Ali in Lucknow, India.
Oh, I know
And
Ali.
she's,
Yes.
yes, you know Ali. So she says a feminist world means there will be equality and no inequality on the basis of gender, caste, sexuality, class, or region. We also have Rita Vidyadana, former editor of the Jakarta Post and a feminist leader from Indonesia. Rita, would you like to share some comments? You can raise your hand and speak. Yes.
Tariro, who's got a hands up.
Yes. So please, Bobby, can you allow her to speak, please? Just a moment.
Yes, Tariro and Rita, you both can speak, please.
Okay,
Just
Rita,
unmute
can
and
you speak? Okay, Rita, please speak.
Okay. So I'm Tariro from Zimbabwe. I just want to say thank you so much for the insights. And this is what is also going on even on this is also going on the health landscape. We are seeing, remember when the coming of HIV and AIDS pandemics and so forth, most directors, most people who pushed these agendas were women, and there was no money. But they tried. There was no medication. They tried. Now they are tolerant medication, new diagnostic, and so forth. We are seeing men pushing out the woman, pushing out the woman, leading organizations and so forth. And as one of the speakers said, they are more on governance, policies, this high level. When you go on the ground, there's nothing happening because the issue of care, the issue of communities, the issue of patient-centered, yes, the lenses, where's the lenses of our woman? I'm so grateful to be part of this agenda and initiative. Please continue the good work and open up the mind of women to remain focused. Together, we can end all the problems and all the pandemics. When pandemics come, who is the first person to counter the problem? It's the woman. All diseases, all situations, they are centered on the woman. They start with the social before they go to the health and other issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tariro. Rita, we would like to hear from you. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me, allowing me to raise questions about all the panelists has come through. So my question is, how do you promote climate justice, health justice into women in our patriarchal society? Because when there is climate change, when pandemic, women also always become the first victims. Usually in last COVID-19 pandemic, women are victims of domestic violence. So how could we address this issue that never ends with degrading women? Thank you.
I think all three panelists can answer, or whoever wants to, maybe each one of them can give their replies.
I can go first. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes.
Well, I can only reflect on my actual experience with the women migrants, especially within Asia. Well, honestly, even for me in the past, talking about the language of feminism, development, justice is not very easy, because within our migrant, women migrant who are mainly a domestic worker, it is natural for them to be exploited. You know, sometimes they have a say, as long as your employer doesn't beat you, then you are okay. You know, even that means even you are not given proper food, even you sleep on the floor and so on. So it took me, like, it took us long time to organize. We have to start with where we are, and then along the way we start providing political education, but it really starts from their level. You know, you cannot talk about feminism, climate crisis, or development justice into a victim of domestic abuse, because you know, a lot, they themselves are also do not understand all this kind of complexity language until they, you know, they are willing to come forward into more empowered situation. So I think introduction, all this thing, it has different level. In the minimum, in my experience, whenever we have issue or a political call or on climate justice, you know, whenever there is a political gathering globally, or we are protesting against all this kind of countries who are actually creating this kind of climate crisis, we join them, we educate the community, even just as simple as putting a poster and taking a photo, or make very brief explanation about this climate crisis. So I think this is one of the minimum participation, but beyond that, also organize some discussion about the effect of the climate crisis in relation to this global, capitalist crisis into our reality of life. You know, I think with this today weather, people can connect to climate issues very easily. You know, like suddenly up, down, flooding, you know, earthquake, and so on and so on. The people is always asking, where is the government? Why they don't even take care of our, life and well-being? I think we can use that kind of sentiment to enter and explain the issue of the climate crisis. So I think it takes different platform. Of course, if we can participate into COP meeting, that is the best. But you know, it's very expensive. Not everyone can do that. But I think we can do the best effort is really on the ground. If we consistently educate, raise the awareness of the community, it will give a bigger and better impact.
Thank you. ABIA and Ivy, would you like to
Yes, I'll
share?
just
Yeah,
respond
yes.
quickly based on the Annie's points on the climate response and engagement of women with all the diversified women, because that's really important from their lived experiences and the practical engagements at the grassroots level, because government made their policies, they have their own plans, but in that, when we witnessed how difficult it is during the flood response, during the earthquake, and even the climate change response, like how difficult for the diversified groups to have that overall understanding and having that voice.
I think we can't hear you, ABIA. Maybe you've lost the connection. We can't hear her. Ivy, yes, you can.
Yeah, I think she's she's sort of suspended.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. There's a cat meowing away. All right. I think I agree with Annie. We need to obviously empower women. We need to get women to understand on the ground what we mean by climate change. And you're right, Rita. Whenever there's a crisis, whether it's a flood, or whether it's a disease, or HIV/AIDS, or COVID, or any kind of illness, a disease, women are the most affected. And one of the ways they're affected is there's domestic violence. We saw during the COVID period, domestic violence was on the rise. And we often, when it comes to domestic violence, we keep saying that we need to empower women. We need to make sure that women are able to stand up. Really, I've been saying this for a long time, and I think there is some work being done now. We need to turn our attentions to toxic masculinity, right? I don't think we're spending enough resources and time addressing toxic masculinity, which is apparent in our politics, it's in our education system, it's in the, it's in the way we do business. Toxic masculinity is still very much alive. The patriarchy is still strong. And I think we have to make sure that men are also held accountable. Yes, we can continue empowering women, but if men do not want to change and they refuse to change, and they're still clinging on to these patriarchal attitudes, then we're going to have domestic violence for the rest of our lives. We're going to have discrimination. We're going to have harassment, rape, sexual harassment, all of it. So a lot of our resources, for me, new world order will also mean we need to spend a lot of our resources tackling toxic masculinity.
Rightly so. And as you said about domestic violence, and as Eni also mentioned, and we tend to forget that domestic violence just means physical violence. But there is a lot more emotional and psychological violence also, which is going on and which goes unnoticed most of the time.
Absolutely.
Because,
absolutely.
yes, so, and that means that has equal bad repercussions. It is not seen. Nobody can see it on the face, but it really kills the woman or the person from inside. So now we have many questions also from the audience. One question is, how can we support and amplify the voices of marginalized gender groups such as trans and non-binary individuals? Any of the panelists, would you please like to answer that?
I can come here.
Yes.
I think the easiest one is really to enable for the community to speak out for themselves. This is one thing I really feel very gratitude to APWLD, because this alliance always facilitate the most marginalized grassroots women leader in different part of sector, in different part of countries within Asia Pacific, to speak out and voice out their issues and concern and aspiration to the global leader, and really try to bridge all this and educate the community about our particular issues, whether migration, whether indigenous community, workers, and so on and so on. So I think if anyone want to start helping, is really to become the enabling actor in different platform. You can make a short story, video, meme. There are many ways now to actually facilitate the grassroots community to actually speak out. A lot of students came to me, and even academic friends always asking, like, what can we do for the, like women migrant or the grassroots community? Because sometimes their idea of helping means very grand, like raising a big fund or organizing a big conference, like engaging with the government in the very kind of, very bureaucratic kind of a dialogue. And honestly, what we tell them, no, you don't have to, in whatever capacity you can. As simple as just, listening to our stories is already a big help. Or helping us to speak out, we are not good with technology and social media. Maybe you can help with that, So I think we have to really objectify our intention. A small contribution really means a lot for the grassroots community. Even it doesn't change our situation right away, but now or later it will contribute to the overall changes that we want. So I think let's start with that simple tips on how to participate.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question from Ashok Ramsarup, a very senior journalist and former producer at SABC, South Africa Broadcasting Corporation. And he asks, how can governments address gender equality through enacting laws that promote equal rights, opportunities, and protections for all genders?
I can take that question.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I think when it comes to gender equality, it must be in the Constitution. We've worked very hard in Malaysia, for example, to ensure that in the Constitution, where the equality clause, the word gender is there, that when we say equality, we also include gender and women. In fact, the South African one is also excellent, because the South African Constitution includes LGBTIQ community too. So that's really progressive, you know. And you know, and I want to quickly touch on the question about how do we make sure that LGBTIQ communities are included. We need to ask ourselves in our respective organizations, how inclusive are we? Are they members? Are they brought to the table when there's a policy discussion? Do we make sure there's representation? We need to facilitate that too. But going back to the other question, the question about making sure governments deliver on gender equality, it has to be in the Constitution, it has to be in policies, and it's not enough just to have it on paper. We need to have mechanisms where we are holding governments accountable. We need to have, and that is where, you know, the UN agencies, whether it's UN reporting mechanisms or whether even national reporting mechanisms, we need to come up with report cards, both nationally and internationally, to see whether they're doing a good job or not. We need to work with parliamentarians. Parliamentarians have to be the constant monitor, you know, to ask the right questions. Are they delivering on the promises? Because it's very well to say, yes, we are all for gender equality, but when we look at the policy, when we look at the action plan, they've left out women. So there's a lot of monitoring and mechanisms that we have to develop. And some countries have developed this, but we need to make sure that our representatives, our politicians, our government servants, all are held accountable. But it has to be in writing first. Well, it can be the other way around. We can start taking action and then make sure it's on writing, but it must get into the constitution of every country, must recognize gender equality.
Thank you. We have another question. How can we challenge and change societal norms that perpetuate gender inequality? And also, how can we address and prevent gender-based violence, such as domestic abuse and sexual harassment? Ivy, you have touched upon that, but yes, in response to these questions, Ivy and ENI are there. I think ABIA has lost connection somehow.
Oh dear, yeah, she's lost connection.
Yes.
What is the question?
How can we challenge and change societal norms that perpetuate gender inequality? There are so many norms which really put women at the back.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It has to start from the individual. You know, my favorite example is sometimes we tend to humor sexism when people make sexist jokes, for example. You know, when we're sitting down and having dinner, we're in a social function, and somebody thinks a sexist joke is okay. Speak up. Right? So it starts from the personal. The personal is the political. So in order to change societal norms, we need to make sure that even in our personal lives, we are calling out any kind of sexism within our circles, within our family, within our friends, within the workplace. And then it also has to be policy, right? We need to make sure that, you know, we have... there are so many images. You know, we see an image where all these very important political leaders get together and they're signing a memorandum of understanding. You see all men, and then the women are standing behind, giving them the pen. All these images have to change. We need to keep calling out and monitoring these stereotypes, ensuring, because quite a number of countries have signed on to CEDAW, right? We all have said we have signed on and ratified CEDAW. In signing this UN declaration, this UN treaty, that the purpose of this UN treaty is to eliminate all forms of discrimination. Article 5 of CEDAW says we have to eliminate stereotypes. And I think we do not do enough of this. We tend to reinforce stereotypes. So the only way we can change social norms is to tackle from the individual to the community to the political. We need to make sure that stereotypes are not being reinforced. And it has to start with us. How many of us, you know, make crack jokes that are actually sexist, racist, right? So we need to... It doesn't mean it doesn't mean we can't have humor. Of course, we can have humor, but not at the expense of women, at the expense of a marginalized group. We need to call out.
Right. ENI, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ivy. To start everything, even in the process of empowerment, we have to educate ourselves. We have to start with ourselves. And I think the hardest part with me, my personal experience, is educating myself, to recognize such language, treatment, or any kind of unconscious acts that we think is normal, but then actually it's not normal. Actually, abnormalizing all this kind of normality is the hardest part because we don't realize we grew up, we develop our character within our social environment, and honestly, using language against others is very normal, against minority, against other ethnicity, and so on. I think that part is the hardest part, and it's really like it's a lifetime education, I can say, and really learn how to be open-minded. And another thing that, just to add to what Ivy point, really developing alliance within our population is very important. I just realized I cannot fight this by myself or be so, like militant, or be and telling the people you are wrong and this. No, because we are really fighting a system that is unconsciously is already embedded within the subconscious mind of our collective population, even within ourselves. So I think developing like alliance or with people like a man who are more, pro-woman, very, also very feminist, agree in equality. And, that kind of what I call it day-to-day friends, those people who are also agreeing and doing the principle of feminism without, sometimes they don't even realize they are doing that. They just agree that they should not exploit their wife or their partner or their children, and so on. And I think this kind of an example person really an important. So it's to be sad because we are really a minority within this world today, within our system. Then using ourselves as an example for others become very, very political in that sense. Without that, then whatever we preach, whatever we say to the people, then it become meaningless because we cannot even do what we say. So like there is a word like do what you preach. So something like that, yeah.
Right. And charity
Yeah,
begins
exactly.
at home.
And
Yes.
you're right, Annie, about I think this work is for all. And very often they will keep saying, okay, what are you women going to do about this? This work is for all. Everyone can be a feminist.
Yes.
Rightly so. We should write a pamphlet about the joys of feminists. Men can be feminists. Anyone and everybody can be a feminist.
Yes.
In fact, everybody should be a feminist.
Should be a feminist, yes. Right, thank you. And yes, as you all have said, it's a process, as Annie mentioned, it's the process of learning, unlearning, and relearning ourselves, and also challenging what the norms with which we were brought up. The women called the weaker sex, the softer sex, and so many things which sometimes we allude to. That all also we have to break. And we have a very good comment from Varuni from Thailand. She says that Thailand now has a female prime minister, and she's the youngest prime minister in the history of Thailand, a female. But it does not mean we have feminist leader. We need feminist leaders to lead us everywhere at all levels. And that is not just by virtue of having a high position. Any comments on that?
Yes, honestly, being a woman doesn't really represent that she will also represent the majority of the women interest. I think this is lesson in the history. We have women in Indonesia, we have women president, we have women ministries, we have women policy makers in all layers. And there is in fact a quota that a certain number of women representatives should be in the House of Representatives, but it doesn't mean she or they will actually bring up and fight for women's rights. And this is a reality that, we feel very sad. We really fight for that kind of slot. The women movement is really the reason why now women are in the parliament. But then when they go to the actual position, doesn't mean she or they will really represent our issues. That's the fact that we have to accept. And at the end of the day, it goes back to the reality of class itself, that many of these women are really from the power, they are the
Yes.
daughter of this, that, or, the grandchildren of that, So in the end of the day, they are not the indigenous grassroots women that we envision, So I think our movement, not only for the women, but even for, for majority of the people who really want to be treated better, is still the same. It's not
Yes.
about having a woman in the representative house is very important, but having people, whether they are women or men, with the right perspective on feminism, inclusion, equality is really, the key to it. But that is really another long way of, for us, not only for women issues. I think for men who are representing the majority of the grassroots, we also have that kind of same concern and issues.
Right. Well, yes.
I was just thinking that you're right. I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to have the right kind of woman as a leader, right? And what the
Yes.
Thai person was saying is that we have now a Thai women prime minister. Am I right? A woman prime
Yes,
minister,
yes,
but it
yes,
doesn't
yes.
necessarily that's good news.
Yes,
But I
yes.
like to think that some Thai girl, someone in Thailand, a little girl in Thailand is saying, "Oh wow, women can be prime ministers. Maybe one day I can be a prime minister." So I want to take away that message also. It may not be the right kind of person, but
Yes.
some young girls are now going to say, "Hey, I can be a prime minister too." And I also wanted to correct myself. See, we need to be aware of ourselves. I kept saying men, women, men, women. I need to say male, female, and intersex, right? Because
Yes.
we have to also
Yes.
include. So our
Yes.
language is also very important. Our language is very binary, right? So
Yes.
just about 10 minutes ago, we are making the same mistakes. We're saying male, female, men, women, and we keep saying, it should also be non-binary language,
Binary,
intersex,
sex.
and make sure all genders are included.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have overshot our time, and I wish this conversation would continue for a longer time, but there would always be another time. And many thanks, IB, ENI, and ABIA for finding time to be with us here today and really having a very interactive and lively session and sharing with us your valuable insights. Special thanks to our audience for their lively participation.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I do believe that a feminist world order is critical for achieving development justice. And as has been mentioned, development justice means redistributive justice, economic justice, social and gender justice, environmental justice, and accountability to peoples. And only then will we be able to address the inequalities of wealth, power, and resources between rich and poor, between males and females, and intersex people. Patriarchy is about using power and violence against other people in order to gain power. And the opposite of patriarchy for me is feminism. It's not matriarchy, but it is feminism. By using care and solidarity to change systems and share and redistribute power. I think that is the message we are taking today from this very, very interesting conversation. Thanks to all of you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.